And that's why all the Rush fans are mad at me. What's going on, everybody? This is the Cover Band Confidential Podcast, the podcast for cover band musicians and band leaders to learn how to rock more inside glass in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm Adam Johnson.
In Greensboro, North Carolina, as a non-deep Rush fan, Dan Ray.
Oof. Sometimes you think about something and you make a video about it and people find it. I was like, it's cool that Rush is back together, and if you don't like it, here are some reasons why that sucks. And some people liked it. Most people liked it. But other people didn't.
The beauty is even negative feedback is still engagement, still counts.
Yeah. Doesn't feel as good.
Sure. But it's all the same to the algorithm.
Yes. And I would say that my intent was to upset a certain populace. And as such, I'm not concerned necessarily with being divisive. I was like, oh, if you're upset, good. That's what I was going for.
That's the right reaction. Yeah.
Well, where you been, man?
Well, I've been to Disney, and not for the reason that I have been going to Disney for the last few months. It was actually family vacation, just a getaway. We did the whole thing, and of course, I was rocking the latest build of the app, the one that's potentially going to be the next version of it, and it was misbehaving in ways that I didn't have. You know, with your family in tow, you don't have time to sit down and do the coding to fix the things that I have done on the solo trips. So I am going to have to go back in a few weeks to test out some of the fixes to the problems I was seeing. I'll tell you, we did the Caring for Giants tour at Animal Kingdom, the elephant behind the scenes tour, and it was awesome. It was so cool. And part of it was the guide, her name was Riley, she has been working with the elephants at Animal Kingdom for the last 6 years, and before that she was a safari driver for 4 years before that. So she knows everything about the animals and the zoology at Animal Kingdom. They gave us a name tag, I'm holding it up right here, that is 80% recycled elephant poop fiber.
Oh, wow.
So as we watched the elephants out there pooping, we did see them poop. She said, yeah, there's printing name tags right now. That's what's happening. It's pretty good. But we learned a ton about elephants and how they manage them there and how they deal with them, and transferring them around from zoo to zoo is a whole thing. There's an organization that manages elephant husbandry and breeding across zoos all across North America. I had no idea. It's really cool. Super cool. That plus a whole Disney, week that was amazing and fun.
Right.
My child discovered that Star Tours is different every time you do it. And so at dinner one night, we had this idea it's 2 hours before close at Hollywood Studios. We could just go loop Star Tours for 2 hours. And so she and I did. And we did Star Tours 6 times in an hour and a half. And at some point, the cast there was cheering us on and counting with us and gave us access to the back way, so we didn't have to walk all the way through the whole line the whole time. They were helping us out. It was a fun time.
That's cool. The good thing about Star Tours, though, is that every time I'm going to get nauseous.
Gotcha.
Regardless of the mission.
Gotcha. My wife has that problem on things like Soarin' and Avatar Flight of Passage, the sort of 3D.
Yeah, the Avatar one did me in pretty bad. I was on meds, literally on it, and it was no match.
Yeah.
It was too much.
Sorry.
We're back into doing we're starting the secondary Disney blog, podcast.
We could.
Nah, we're not going to do that.
No.
So yeah, let's see. Other than a crazy Rush video popping off, had that awesome conversation with Eric from Chicago this week.
Yeah.
That was very fun. We've gotten more comments from people just saying how much they like Eric. Just what a nice guy he is. I was like, I can't think of higher praise than just absolute strangers on the internet, coming out of the woodwork to, say nice things about you.
Yeah.
Not as much about us, but definitely a lot about him. So that it speaks highly of him, of course.
No, I'm insufferable. He, however, is amazing. So
yeah, absolutely. And everything else just kind of prepping for this gig on Saturday. We've got the Dogwood Festival we're headlining. We are leaving for Florida very early tomorrow, and then we were driving back on Saturday, the day of the show, to do the thing. I've got my my wireless charging over here. I'm doing all the pre-gig stuff, except I have to do it 7 days in advance. Right. So I had to print the set lists out tonight to make sure we have them for Saturday. So that's always fun. And I've been playing a lot of guitar because this, the Traveler Vibrant is just a fun instrument, and I was making content in partnership with Traveler a little bit, and so I just had the excuse to play them. And I also am playing this amazing new tube amp that I just got that my son built me.
Oh.
Which is pretty crazy. That was his final project for engineering this year. And
Cool.
it's this 1 watt Princeton kind of riff, and it sounds incredible. And I don't normally play with like a live amp. I've been playing this thing all the time, and it's been amazing.
Great.
It sounds killer. So, no other housekeeping things. We've had a few kind of special episodes, and now we're just back to the regular run of events. And so, yeah, there's nothing crazy or interesting to get into beyond the main topic.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so I made a scripted video that has not come out yet. It might be out by the time this hits the waves, but it's a bit tighter than the conversation we're obviously going to have about it. The main topic of this was 8 reasons why your band can't get corporate gigs, like private events primarily.
Yeah. Yes.
So it's I am in a band and we're playing bars and clubs and trying to figure out what do these bands that are making 3x what I normally make a night doing that my band's not, and can I do that for us ultimately? So this is things that you're not doing that you can fix.
Very good.
So we're going to say you don't do this, and we're just saying that to fix it, you start doing it.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. Number 1,
Here.
You are selling yourself like a bar band. It's pretty easy to do. If all you play in bars.
If that's what you've been doing, it's all you know. Yeah.
So, if all of your content is kind of locked in that world, it can be really difficult to appear to operate in a different environment or a different, echelon.
And if you got your marketing all dialed in around how good an alcohol salesperson you are, it's not relevant for a private event.
Yeah.
In fact, it's probably counterproductive for a private event.
It can be. I mean, I guess it really depends on the event. There's something to be said about, bands that make good money at bars being entertaining. And so that can be a plus to a booking agent.
That's
it's just
that's the
how
path
is that
to
positioned?
it.
Yes.
Yeah, that's your hook.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So primarily it's just a matter of figuring out ways to kind of show how you operate outside of the bar world and club world. So, find ways to rotate that kind of content into your rhythm, I guess, or schedule.
And for a band that has no track record of that, no evidence to show of that, what would you say they should do first?
It could be a couple of things. One, it's making content that's not just centered around performance.
Okay.
Cultivating a following in your niche of some sort. Maybe finding ways to make it look like you're doing a gig that you may not be doing just yet.
Yeah, and our advice about making videos has always been the video needs to show you looking cool and people having fun.
Yeah.
And can be the stepping stone for bigger stuff.
Right. So there is a bit of fake it till you make it to, a social strategy. And that's a little further down the line as well. But it's mostly about, not posting every day like, you guys ready to get freaking wasted this weekend?
Right.
Right. You got to be able to do something just beyond that.
Yes.
Moving along, number 2, you don't have a real website. And this is one of those things that I think a lot of bands are able to talk themselves out of. They're like, it's not really that important.
Right.
But I can say with certainty that having a standalone web presence can 10x your ability to bring in leads.
You get leads off of your website, just the contact form, all the time, right?
All the time. It is the sole way we get booked.
Yeah.
Like we are not currently in the business of like reaching out to venues and stuff and doing that kind of thing. It is fully self-propelled off of those 2 sites. So it's a number of things, but the primary deal is that having a dedicated space for yourself means, one, you have control over it. So if Instagram or YouTube changes something in the algorithm and all of a sudden what you're accustomed to getting as far as coverage goes away. Like, you don't have to worry about that with your own website. You control the flow of the information. You control what goes up on those pages. And sometimes you kind of goof yourself into having high visibility on certain things. Like, at some point we realized that we are the first thing that pops up when somebody puts in Atlanta live band karaoke. But that happened because every time we did a live band karaoke gig, I made a blog post about it. And so I've got this backlog of things that show we've been doing this for a while. And so when people look for it, that's what pops up.
Perfect.
And the same goes with the 80s band. We've been around long enough where, they're the crawlers, are able to find us pretty easily. Because it's just been there. Yeah. It doesn't have to be super fancy. It needs to have a few things. It's got to have some professional information, not like anything crazy, no individual bios or anything like that. Professional photos, solid video promo, a way to get in touch with you that looks, pretty above board. It's not like Steve's Gmail account or whatever. And just something that puts out that you are operating in these spaces. You have customers who can vouch for you. Testimonials are like a huge part of that process.
Totally. Listen, and I think a lot of bands make the mistake of, you mentioned individual bios. I would not bother.
Doesn't matter.
I think it's pointless. I think you replace that space with testimonials, which grow over time.
Yep.
Start small and grow over time. But yeah, so-and-so was born at a very early age and learned music when he was 3. And just don't.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Truly doesn't. What you can do as far as a bio goes is you've been around for this number of years. For whatever reason, that is like something that people really care about, having an established.
But about the project.
Right.
About the brand, not about the people.
Correct. They've been around since this. They have done these things. They have played these venues. They have worked with these clients.
Like a band level resume.
Yes. So it's the same kind of idea, but something that's just very, very easy to digest, tentpole stuff that your band has accomplished. What you basically have is you've got somebody who has been tasked with the job of putting on an event for a company, let's say. So they're going to start Googling, looking for vendors. They're going to look for venues. They're going to look for caterers. They're going to look for, photo booth people. And so you're just one of the things that they've got to pop, that's going to pop up. And whatever you have on that landing site, I'm talking about even without scrolling, that matters because you've got just fractions of seconds to grab people's attention in these kinds of decisions.
Yep. I think there's a thought I had as I was thinking about what I just said is that for a solo artist, there is still this path to corporate work that is a little bit personal, a little bit more my own resume, but it's still not like the story of my life, right? It's more like, here's what I've accomplished. Here are the credentials that you can look at and believe that I can deliver on your date, right? It's not a bio. It's more like a resume.
Yeah, it's a CV.
It's a CV.
In the grand scheme of things, it's really just about what can we do for you.
Yeah,
because that's really all. That's all they are looking for. They're not necessarily. I've yet to find one of these party planners that's like, I'm looking for the best analog signal path in all of this market.
That's right. Right.
I'm looking for
the best live audio mixing.
I want the best tone.
Right.
I need a guitarist with the best tone in the city. Nobody's asking for that. They're like, can you show up and not ruin my party and make me look like a jerk in front of my boss?
That is 100% the challenge.
It's got very little to do with the talent or the musicality. Those things are important, but not as important as some of these
table
other things.
stakes.
Yeah,
they're table stakes. They're expected. They're baseline.
Yeah. Pouring into that, the next thing that we've been talking about is there's no clear brand. Right. And this is my agency theory kind of put into practice, because it's really easy for a band to be like, oh, we do this, we play everything. We play 70s, 80s, 90s, now 40s, top whatever.
20s.
It sounds great. to other musicians. And you think that when a prospective client reaches out to you and they're like, what is it you're looking for? And you just be like, oh, we can do whatever. Like, that's not what they want.
No.
They want you to kind of tell them what it is that, is going to make their night.
Yeah. And you need to have told them that in advance so that when they search, they find you for that.
Right.
Right. They're not going to reach out to you and be like, what can you do? And you say, well, here's my niche.
Right.
You're going to have declared your niche into the search algorithm.
Yep.
On your website. Mm-hmm. And as a result, they'll have come to you for that because they've already got a plan for an 80s night or a 90s night or whatever it is.
Right.
Yacht rock night or whatever. But unless you are focused in your messaging, you don't pop out when they search for that.
Yeah. So this is very much a front-facing, like, advertisement style operation.
And a decision you make before a name or a logo, like, this is fundamental stuff. This is at the beginning of the whole conversation. What are we? What is it we're promising the market? Go back to episode 4 or whatever it was, where I laid out my thesis of branding. A brand is a promise you make to the market. And if it's not clear, then it's not a powerful brand, period.
Well, and on that note, the solution isn't necessarily like, well, my band can only do one thing.
No, sure.
So, in our situation, I created a website. I found that there was a URL, ATL Party Bands was available, as well as ATL Wedding Bands and a couple of other ones. They all kind of pour into the same bucket. And so my idea was that, well, if somebody can come to this page to find entertainment, and then I have this kind of roster of different acts that do different things. So there's Members Only, there's Can't Hardly Wait, the 90s thing, there's Warped for pop punk and whatever. We got live band karaoke. The client doesn't necessarily understand that it doesn't matter what band they book, the musicians who show up are probably going to be exactly the same
folks. Yeah.
But for a particular type of client who is looking for a very specific solution, it is much easier to pitch them something super specific and very narrow, because that gives them exactly what they're looking for and doesn't force them to have to think through or compromise or whatever. Like, you don't need to worry about that.
Well, and they already probably have a niche they're aiming for before they even search.
Right. Because every event's got some sort of theme to it, and so they're looking for something specific for the most part.
Right. And if you don't fit that, you don't want to try to pretend you fit that.
Yeah.
But if you do fit that, great. You want to be there in advance.
Yeah. In those moments where you are trying to bring in these kinds of clients, let's say you get that first inquiry. This next one is where it all falls apart. Yep. It's the thing that you really got to have together, or at least be able to make it look like you do, is professional systems. Most bands don't have any sort of systemic means of operation.
In short, they're not a business.
Right. And so, when an email comes in, who responds to it? What is the time frame where every inquiry gets a response? What is the general approach on the first follow-up? Do you do it over email, or do you do it over the phone? All of these things how is
pricing done?
Yeah. These all seem like tiny, inconsequential choices, but when you stack them all on top of one another, it makes all the difference. And it's the thing that separates the men from the boys in these kinds of scenarios.
Yeah. You are a B2B company.
In customer service.
Business to business provider in customer service, 100%. And so you got to understand what invoicing looks like, what accounts payable looks like. You got to understand what HR complications there are in having a band at a company party.
Yeah.
All of that's really critical because it's critical to your consumers, critical to your buyer.
Yeah.
In product management, we do this thing called persona analysis, where you think through who that person is, who's your user or your customer or whatever. In my day gig, I sell into companies And so my buyer persona is the company buyer, but their user is their membership, their association members. So I have to be careful to understand that my buyer persona is very different from my user persona. And I got to be thinking of both those folks at once. It's kind of like that. If you're just thinking about what you're going to put out on stage, that's you thinking about your guest persona.
Right.
Right. Very different person from your corporate buyer persona who has totally different objectives and needs and things they need to look good to the boss for and all kinds of stuff that's not at all about what happens between you and the audience.
And can we just go ahead and say the quiet part? This is really unsexy stuff, guys. This is
Yeah. This is the sort of nuts and bolts of business right here.
Yeah. And it's the thing that, is very easy for musicians to kind of tune out of. But the folks who get this and can go to the trouble of doing it ultimately reap the rewards.
Yep.
So, I just wanted, I felt like it was past time.
No, for sure. No, creative people are really going to struggle with this part because it's not creative. It's structural.
Yeah.
And if you can find a way to have that structuralness of it be a work of art, that's really cool. That's really cool. People in product management, the domain I work in, think about that a lot, about how to have business operations be something that's designed and craftful. I would say musicians, not so much.
Yeah. But for not speaking in vagaries, but talking through specific things you need to be familiar with.
Yeah.
You're going to need to have some sort of entity for them to send stuff to. So that could look like an LLC or a DBA, something of that note, a corporate account where they can write checks to an entity versus a person. That's really important. You need to be able to generate certain kinds of paperwork. So things like contracts, technical, hospitality writers, invoices,
all that. Yeah.
All of that stuff. Things like insurance and just certain logistical things like, input lists and stage plots and just professional stuff, deliverables that you can provide people, EPKs, if such a thing exists, or, promo materials for advertisements and that kind of stuff. You need high res images of all your logos and promotional stuff and all of that kind of thing. The cool thing is that we have an entire page on our website dedicated to all of these things. You can just go and check them out. So, that will, of course, be in the show notes, but it's coverbandconfidential.com/links. Pretty easy to remember.
There you go.
And just basically everything that you need to get things going, it's there. So go check it out. Number 5 is kind of like number 1 and kind of number 2 and kind of number 3. It's just social proof. We're kind of retreading it, but it's the way you carry yourself online. And whether it's just about having fun on the weekends and, the bar gigs that you're doing, or, are you trying to cultivate an audience that pays attention to you between shows? Is there certain personalities in the group that are entertaining enough to retain a following outside of just the gigs that you're doing?
Yeah. Social proof is a hard thing because there's, if you're trying to break into the space, there's a real cold start problem.
Yep.
When I was sort of working to crack this as both a band and a solo project, I would ask the person who booked me for the corporate event, assuming they were happy at the end of the night, which, I made sure they were. And probably it was a party, so probably they'd been drinking and enjoying and all of that, and they were happy and everything. I'd ask them if I could just have, just 10, 15 second, just something they could say on video for me. Just tonight was great. Dan was fantastic. Loved everything he did. Made our party great. And just capture just a little moment of happiness at the end of the night. And I made myself a pretty good library of people who were saying great things about what I had just accomplished for them that evening. You want to build that sort of stuff. You want to build those sorts of things, those sort of testimonials. That really, I cannot overstate how powerful that is. Because when somebody is shopping for someone, their reputation's on the line, their how they're going to look to their boss on Monday after the Saturday party is on the line, and they want to know that you've come through for some other people who are in that same situation.
Right. And the cool thing about that is that it's very low stakes and easy to scale. And things that you can get basically from the drop. Because, if people are around and want to say nice things about you, it doesn't matter whether it was at a public gig or, something that was lightly attended, but, enthusiastically supported. None of that stuff reads on a talking head testimonial. It just doesn't.
Right.
So
right.
that stuff is easy to source if you're willing to just do the legwork.
Yes.
And again, the capital that kind of content can raise is very, like, it's probably the highest ROI.
For sure. I mean, imagine on your website, you see sometimes a carousel on a website of like quotes of people, but imagine there's a carousel of videos of people saying, "Oh my God, this band was so great and made my corporate event so good, and everybody had such a great time. They're fantastic. You should book them." Next screen. Yeah. "Oh my God, it was such a great time, and you should book these guys. They're fantastic. They played my favorite songs." On to the next one. Imagine 4 or 5 of those in a row. I mean, it's killer. It's killer.
Yeah. It's the easiest way to get to where you want to go.
You just got to remember to do it, because I'm always in loadout mode at the end.
Yep.
I forget to tackle that booker,
right,
and make them say things, but they're always willing to. I've never had somebody say like, "You know what, I can't say anything nice." That has not happened.
Right.
So,
well, and with socials, because it's just, it's what you're putting out there, you can do things like advertise for private parties or weddings or corporate events. You can just put a stock photo up of a wedding, be like, "Do you need what?" Like, that kind of stuff is super, again, low stakes, low risk, potential high reward.
Yep.
It's not going to cost you much, but it could pay off like really big. So even if you're not where you want to be, you can start telling that story before you make that transition publicly through your social media channels.
Yes.
So do that.
Do that.
All right. So these next ones, it's hand in hand to a degree, and very different from the other ones. This is like practical stuff. Like number 6, the reason why you can't get corporate gigs is because you're too damn loud. Yeah. And it doesn't really matter what size your tube combo is or how many watts it has or how hard your drummer hits. Most of the time when you're playing these kinds of events and you're playing these kinds of spaces, they're just not designed for live music.
Look, a corporate gig almost has to have a silent stage. Almost has to.
And if it's not silent, then it's got to be like way tamped down.
I can see a band that has live horns having that be the loudest thing on a stage.
Yeah.
But you can't be that band that's got the roaring amps and expect to be booked, in the meeting room, the ballroom of something.
Yeah.
Partially because with that sort of setup, you're going to be roaring loud up front and then unhearable in the back 2/3 of the room.
Right.
You got to have some kind of system that can capture all that and then throw it nicely.
Right.
And what that takes is direct to board. It takes modeling. It takes usually e-drums.
Yes, the dreaded.
Well, it's the cymbals. They feel like crap. I know.
We all know.
But it takes that. Because then you've got control. Then you've got total control about where you can put the sound, how precisely you can put the volumes, what kind of systems you can put in that throw them to certain degrees. It's as much a requirement as anything else.
Yeah. And another thing to note is that these aren't shows that you're playing. These are events that you are a vendor for.
Mm-hmm.
Very different approach to things. So your job is to be a focal point of this event. Odds are you are not the focal point.
Right.
And maybe you are for like a particular segment of the event, but the rest of the time you are just you're there as a vendor to be whatever it is they need you to be.
No,
and sometimes that's wallpaper.
90 minutes of dance party, but then the boss is going to get on the mic and give the awards for the year. Top salesman, right? Employee of the year, all that stuff. And nobody cares about that either, but the boss does.
Right.
And
they're the one signing your check.
They're the one signing your check. So you need to be the one providing them a mic, probably, at that moment. You'd be ready for that. Even if you didn't plan for it, they're going to reach for it. They're going to expect it. Be prepared. So yes, you're not the show. You are there to facilitate a particular phase of the evening.
Yep.
And if you're helpful for other parts, then great. That's a bonus.
Right. But it's the shift of the mindset from I am a band that is here to rock, and I am a customer service vendor that is a part of the live events world.
Look, nobody came to see you. They came to be seen here at their company party.
Right. You are there just basically at the at their whim, at their pleasure.
Yeah. And to give them an opportunity to dance.
Yeah. So if you can do that at any volume, which means that if you need to be loud, you can be loud. And if you need to be soft, you can be soft.
Right.
You're going to be able to do that. You're going to be able to get those gigs and operate in spaces that don't seem plausible for live music. I know that we have done more than our fair share of those.
You were under a dinosaur.
Been under a dinosaur, have been in the corner of a fuzzy room. I've been inside the booth of a restaurant. Yeah, we've been everywhere.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we've been in the corner under all the neon lights that made our all of our wireless fail.
Yep.
I played in essentially basically a greenhouse where every frequency fed back all the way up and down the spectrum. Yeah, all kinds of crazy places. And you just got to be prepared. Which actually feeds into number 7.
Yeah. You got to be able to handle your own production. Yep. And that either means that you roll with it or you know how to source it consistently and affordably.
Yeah, so maybe you rock up with your own PA, frontline, backline, monitoring, lights, everything it takes to do a show, or you know where to come up with those things locally.
Yeah. And this one is 100% the hardest thing to do because it's the thing that, it is a legitimate capital expenditure, for a business. The cool thing though, is that there are ways for bands to do this without going into a ton of debt or getting themselves into trouble because of things like Sweetwater doing these 48-month 0% financing options. You could get a full PA and pay a couple $100 a month that covers it. You could even, pay ahead of it. And the next thing you know, you're busy and this thing's paid off.
Yep.
That's exactly what we did.
Yeah.
Exactly. And now, it's there and we're constantly putting stuff into it, taking stuff out of it. And it's the reason why we've been able to do most of what we've done is because we can.
Yep. There is also the opportunity, especially if you're traveling somewhere, it's not a local gig to you, or if it calls for more production than you are ready to invest in, there are companies that can rent all of that stuff.
Yep.
There's a conference I'm going to end of this month that 3 or 4 of us who regularly attend that conference are also cover band people, and we're actually going to be playing one of the conference evening events, the official band of this organization, and we are renting a backline for it, and guitars and drums and all of the whole thing's rented. I'm going to be taking my Headrush Flex Prime, but apart from that, the guitar I'm going to land on is a rental. The cables are rented. Everything.
Yeah.
And it came to $1,600, I think. So you bake that in, and it's paid for.
Yeah.
There'll be people to set it up, break it down. It's my dream gig. It's honestly my dream gig. If I could just do this, that'd be great.
Yeah. That is the downside though, is that, when you own the PA, you own it.
You own it.
It's also incumbent upon you to move it.
Yeah.
So
or pay someone to.
Yeah. Right. But yeah, it was 10 or so years ago, we kind of looked at what was on the table, what we were able to do. We had a conversation with the agency that was booking us at the time. And they're like, if you do this, I can guarantee you X, Y, and Z. And it was more than enough. And so we're like, okay. And so we bit the bullet and a pallet from Sweetwater showed up at my house. Nice. And that was that. It was great.
Yeah, great.
Okay. So let's land this plane.
Okay.
And this one is kind of the opposite of what it sounds like. And this is the one that this is my experience. People don't talk about money in this market. I know it's not the way, it's not that way everywhere, but talking about money and specifically pricing. And this is the very unsatisfying answer that I give when people ask me, well, how are they able to charge $3,000 to $5,000 a show? So the easiest way to get $3,000 gigs is only saying yes to $3,000 gigs.
Yeah. How do you make $5,000? You charge $5,000.
Right. In the other 7 things, there are ways to build and justify that cost, though. Mm-hmm. And it is the external proof that we build it through, in 1 through 7 that gives us the ability to do number 8.
Right.
And for some bands, that looks like basically having a menu on your website that says this is what the band costs. And there's all of these different things. There's the number of players. There's the amount of production we're bringing, whether we're bringing it at all. Do we include lights? Does it include a standalone engineer? Does it include a horn section? Like, you have all these different things that you can add or take away in order to get to the pricing. And I think there's value to that. I think it's a way to reduce friction because you kind of lay it all out there.
I'll say it qualifies buyers nicely.
Yes. For better or worse, like it lets everybody know where you stand.
Well, it disqualifies buyers nicely. That's part of it. The people who see your pricing and take themselves out of the running and don't even bother you.
Right.
Yeah, that's good.
That's it. But on the flip side of that, there's value to not putting your pricing up as well. Now, the first thing is that you just got to be comfortable throwing numbers out and not, try and walk them back immediately.
Right.
So
or justify them super hard. Yeah.
Right. Beyond that, though, you don't really you don't know what the other party's working with. And so, at least for us, the biggest paycheck we ever got is because I didn't tell them what we charged. I asked them what their budget was.
There you go.
And guess what? The top end of their budget was over double what we normally charge. Right. And wouldn't you know it? We were able to make that work.
Yeah, suddenly that seems like a price I could do.
That's perfectly reasonable.
Yeah.
And so that's what we did.
Yep.
To play, we made more than double we've ever made to play 45 minutes at 7:45 in the morning.
Love that.
Just because we bothered to ask the question.
Yeah.
So pricing is a double-edged sword. Above all, though, you've got to be willing to throw numbers and just live with them.
And kind of throw them blind. Like, that's the other thing.
Yeah.
Like, because the industry is so shy about talking about pricing, none of us really have a good sense of what the market will bear.
Right.
And I think that's working against us. I think if we could say a little more honestly to each other what we're getting, that we'd do better. There'd be more places where we're leaving budget on the table because we're not asking the questions you asked.
Right. Now, on the flip side, though, like, charge what you're going to charge, but also know what you'll take.
Yeah.
Because sometimes the lower payday is worth it on other parameters.
Sure.
It could be a guaranteed big crowd or a ton of advertising put behind you for, name recognition, getting your name out there. Could just be like you're opening for a cool act that you really enjoy. So there's the reasons to take lower paydays. And sometimes it's just like, hey, we've got the weekend open and, it's either that or staying home and we can make it work. And so we'll do it. So find a number and live with it, but have other numbers. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Like it.
Have a floor, but don't have a ceiling.
Right.
But have a place where you want to be and just see what that looks like for you. See how that operation feels in your market. And, these things can be fluid and flexible, or, in our case, like, our pricing's pretty much been flat the past 5 years. We kind of like the space that we're in. We could go up market, we could go down market, but we're kind of happy with the variety and regularity of it. So, we don't find a need to really do that calculus right now.
Yeah.
That's it. 8 things that you can do to get on the other side of that. And like I said, if you need specific resources, coverbigconfidential.com/links, plural, all the things you're looking for, blank contracts, hospitality writers, backing track resources, third-party companies that, we aren't affiliated with, but, we use, just stuff, helpful, useful things. Go check it out.
Good.
Anything else?
No.
Awesome. I got to go pack a car.
Get it.
Get it on the beach. Folks, thanks so much for tuning in. Couldn't do without you. If you like sports show, you can do any of these things. But I'll go ahead and call it for this week. In Atlanta, Georgia, I'm Adam Johnson.
In Greensboro, North Carolina, I'm Dan Ray.
You have been listening to the Cover Band Confidential podcast for the week of April 10th, 2026.